Was Jesus from a royal family? This isn't a theory from a fictional novel, but a question spurred by a real archaeological artifact, the James, brother of Jesus, ossuary. We're forensic investigators today, scrutinizing every detail of this ancient discovery to determine if it definitively proves a shocking royal lineage for Jesus. The implications are monumental, and we're about to unveil them. Picture this: October 2002, a press conference in Washington, D.C. sends shockwaves through the archaeological and religious world. A limestone bone box measuring 20 inches long, 10 inches wide, and 12 inches high sits under brilliant lights. Carved into its pale surface in ancient Aramaic script are words that would ignite one of the most explosive debates in biblical archaeology. James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. A bone box, an ossuary, the ancient Jewish practice of secondary burial, where bodies were laid in caves for a year until the flesh decomposed, then the bones were collected and placed in stone boxes. Common practice in first century Jerusalem. Thousands of these boxes have been found. But this one claimed to contain the remains of James, the brother of the man millions worship as the Son of God. But here's where it gets interesting. The inscription doesn't just mention Jesus. It identifies a family structure: Joseph, James, Jesus. A family tree carved in stone. And if this family tree is authentic, if these bones truly belong to Jesus' brother, what does the evidence surrounding this family tell us about their social standing? Were they peasants, as tradition often suggests? Or does the archaeological record hint at something far more royal? Let's start with what we know for certain. The ossuary surfaced in the antiquities market, purchased by an Israeli engineer and collector named Oded Golan. No controlled excavation, no documented find spot. In archaeology, this is what we call provenance problems. Without knowing exactly where an artifact was discovered, we lose critical context. But the inscription itself, that became the battleground. The Aramaic text reads, Yaakov bar Yosef Akui di Yeshua, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Three incredibly common names in first century Judea. Statistical analyses suggested that in Jerusalem during that period, there could have been approximately 20 individuals named James, with a father named Joseph and a brother named Jesus. 20 possible matches in a city of perhaps 80,000 people. So why the excitement? Because of one extraordinary detail, the addition of the brother's name. In ancient ossuaries, patronymic inscriptions identifying someone by their father's name were standard practice. But adding a sibling's name, that was exceptionally rare. It only happened when that sibling was famous, influential, or notable enough to help identify the deceased. Imagine being identified not by your own achievements, but by your brother's renown. What kind of brother merits that distinction? This brings us to our first impossible question. If Jesus was merely a peasant carpenter's son from Nazareth, a nobody from a nowhere town, why would his name be used to identify his brother on an ossuary? Think about it. You don't identify someone by their relationship to an unknown person. You identify them by their connection to someone significant. The early Christian sources give us crucial information about James. According to the historian Josephus, writing around 93 or 94 CE, James was executed in Jerusalem in 62 CE by order of the high priest Ananus. Josephus calls him the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. This matches our inscription, but more importantly, Josephus tells us James held a position of considerable authority in Jerusalem. He wasn't a marginal figure. He led the Jerusalem church, the mother community of the entire Christian movement. Now let's examine the royal lineage theory. The Gospels of Matthew and Luke provide genealogies for Jesus, tracing his ancestry through Joseph back to King David. Matthew's Gospel explicitly states this connection in its opening verse, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. If Joseph was truly descended from the Davidic royal line, then James, as Joseph's son, would also carry this royal heritage. But here's the complication that makes this absolutely fascinating: the Romans. By the 1st century CE, Judea was under Roman occupation. The Herodian dynasty, installed by Rome, ruled as client kings. Any legitimate claimant to the ancient Davidic throne represented a potential threat to Roman authority. The very existence of Davidic descendants was politically explosive. Think about what this means. If Jesus' family genuinely descended from David's royal house, they weren't just religiously significant, they were politically dangerous. Every birth, every gathering, every public appearance carried the weight of dynastic implications. The Romans didn't tolerate rival royal claims. They crushed them with systematic brutality. Yet the New Testament presents Jesus' family as humble peasants, a carpenter and his wife, raising children in the backwater village of Nazareth. But is this the complete picture, or is it a carefully constructed narrative designed to deflect Roman suspicion? Because here's what doesn't add up. Humble peasants don't typically have their genealogies meticulously preserved and recorded in religious texts. Let's dig deeper into the archaeological evidence surrounding 1st century Nazareth. Traditional accounts describe it as an insignificant hamlet, perhaps housing 200 to 400 people. Archaeological excavations have revealed a small agricultural village with rock-cut tombs, olive presses, and terraced farming. Nothing suggests wealth or political importance, but absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Recent archaeological work has uncovered something intriguing beneath Nazareth's Church of the Annunciation, a 1st century house. Not elaborate, but well constructed with quality stonework. The inhabitants weren't destitute. They possessed skills, resources, and social connections beyond mere subsistence farming. Carpentry in the ancient world wasn't just woodworking. The Greek word tekton, used to describe Joseph's profession, could mean builder, craftsman, or artisan, someone who worked with wood, stone, and metal. Now consider this. Skilled craftsmen could be relatively prosperous. They served local communities, but also potentially larger construction projects. During Jesus' youth, just 4 miles from Nazareth, the city of Sepphoris was being rebuilt and expanded under Herod Antipas. This wasn't a village project. It was a major urban development requiring hundreds of skilled workers. Could Joseph and his sons have worked there? Could this explain resources that seem inconsistent with peasant poverty? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's return to the ossuary and examine the inscription with forensic precision. In 2003, the Israel Antiquities Authority assembled a committee of experts to authenticate the artifact. Their conclusion shocked the world. Forgery. They claimed the patina, the aged surface coating that forms on limestone over centuries, was artificial in the latter part of the inscription, specifically the phrase, "brother of Jesus." The implications were devastating. If forged, the entire royal lineage question became moot. But Oded Golan didn't accept the verdict quietly. He fought back, hiring his own experts, demanding rigorous scientific testing. What followed was a legal battle lasting 7 years, one of the longest and most expensive trials in Israeli history. The prosecution argued that Golan was a master forger who had fooled collectors and scholars for years. They presented evidence of forgery materials in his apartment, suspicious chemical residues, and testimony from handwriting experts who claimed the inscription showed signs of modern tooling. The case seemed overwhelming. But then, the defense presented their counter-evidence. Independent geologists examined the patina using electron microscopy and chemical analysis. Their findings? The patina was consistent with genuine ancient formation. No modern materials detected, no evidence of artificial aging. The oxygen isotope ratios in the patina matched those found in authentic ancient Jerusalem limestone. More experts testified. Paleographers, specialists in ancient writing systems, analyzed the Aramaic script. The letter forms, they argued, were consistent with first-century Jewish scribal practices. The spelling, the grammar, the style all matched the period. One expert, André Lemaire from the Sorbonne, maintained his position that the inscription was authentic throughout the entire trial. In 2012, after examining hundreds of witnesses and thousands of pieces of evidence, Judge Aharon Farkash delivered his verdict. Not guilty. The prosecution had failed to prove forgery beyond reasonable doubt. But notice what the judge didn't say. He didn't declare the ossuary definitively authentic. He simply stated the evidence for forgery was insufficient. This is where we stand today. An artifact that could revolutionize our understanding of Jesus' family origins, trapped in evidential limbo. Neither proven authentic, nor proven false. A Schrödinger's ossuary, simultaneously genuine and fake, until further evidence tips the scales. But let's assume, for the sake of investigation, that the ossuary is authentic. What then? Does it prove royal lineage? Not directly. The inscription identifies family relationships, not social status. But it opens a door to examining other evidence that might support or refute the royal connection. The New Testament itself provides intriguing clues. In Romans chapter 1, verse 3, Paul writes that Jesus was descended from David according to the flesh. This isn't metaphorical language. Paul is making a genealogical claim about physical ancestry. Similarly, in Revelation chapter 5, verse 5, Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David. These titles carry royal connotations, echoing the promises made to David's dynasty in 2 Samuel chapter 7. Early Christian sources outside the New Testament also preserve traditions about Jesus' Davidic descent. Eusebius, the 4th century church historian, records an account from Hegesippus about the grandsons of Jude, another brother of Jesus. According to this account, these grandsons were brought before the Roman Emperor Domitian around 95 CE because they were descendants of David. The emperor, fearing potential rivals, questioned them about their ancestry and their kingdom. What happened next is remarkable. The brothers showed the emperor their calloused hands, evidence of manual labor. They explained they owned only a small plot of land worth 9,000 denarii, which they farmed themselves. They paid taxes. They posed no political threat. Their kingdom, they insisted, was not of this world, but would appear at the end of time. Domitian, satisfied they were harmless peasants, released them. But notice what this story confirms. The Roman authorities took Davidic lineage claims seriously enough to investigate them. These weren't dismissed as irrelevant religious fantasies. They were treated as potential political threats, requiring imperial attention. Would Rome waste the emperor's time interrogating random peasants unless there was substantial reason to believe their royal claims? Here's another fascinating detail. The brothers owned land. 9,000 denarii might not sound like much, but let's put it in perspective. A single denarius was a day's wage for a laborer. 9,000 denarii represented approximately 25 years of daily labor. For supposedly destitute peasants, this was substantial property. Not aristocratic wealth, certainly, but solid middle-class resources. This pattern repeats throughout the evidence. Jesus' family, while not wealthy, possessed resources and connections that suggest something more than desperate poverty. They could afford to travel to Jerusalem for religious festivals, a journey requiring provisions, lodging, and time away from subsistence farming. Mary and Joseph brought Jesus to the temple for dedication, offering sacrifices. Luke's gospel specifies they offered a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the offering prescribed for those who couldn't afford a lamb. Not wealthy, but able to meet religious obligations. Consider also Jesus' education. He could read. In Luke chapter 4, verse 16 through 17, Jesus enters the synagogue in Nazareth, stands up to read, and is handed the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. He reads from it publicly. Literacy in first-century Judea wasn't universal. It required resources, time, and access to teachers. How does a peasant family afford education for their son? The synagogue itself provides another clue. Archaeological evidence suggests Nazareth had a synagogue in the 1st century, though the structure itself hasn't been definitively located. But synagogues required communities large enough to support them, literate members who could read scripture, and organizational infrastructure. Even in a small village, there was social structure, hierarchy, and education. Jesus' family participated in this structure at a level that required literacy and religious knowledge. Now let's examine James more closely, because the Ossuary inscription identifies him specifically, and his story might illuminate the family's true status. After Jesus' death, James emerged as the unquestioned leader of the Jerusalem church. Not Peter, despite Jesus' famous declaration about building his church on Peter. Not John, the beloved disciple. James, the brother who apparently didn't believe in Jesus during his lifetime, according to the Gospel of John. What transformed James from skeptic to leader? The Apostle Paul, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 7, mentions that the risen Christ appeared to James specifically. This appearance, whatever its nature, catalyzed James's transformation. But more importantly for our investigation, it positioned him at the center of the Jerusalem community, the most prestigious and influential Christian congregation in existence. The Book of Acts portrays James presiding over the Jerusalem Council around 49 CE, the crucial meeting that determined whether Gentile converts needed to follow Jewish law. Peter speaks, Paul and Barnabas report their missionary work, but James renders the final decision. His authority supersedes even the apostles who had walked with Jesus during his ministry. Why? What gave James this extraordinary authority? Traditional Christian interpretation suggests his relationship to Jesus explains everything. The Lord's brother naturally commands respect and authority. But think about this more carefully. Jesus had other brothers, Joses, Simon, and Judas, according to Mark's Gospel. Why didn't they share equally in this authority? Why James specifically? One possibility, birth order. James was likely the eldest of Jesus' brothers, placing him in the position of family patriarch after Jesus' death and Joseph's earlier passing. In Jewish culture, the eldest male carried significant authority and responsibility. If the family genuinely descended from David's royal line, James would be the living representative of that lineage, the heir to dynastic claims that stretched back 1,000 years. This brings us to a crucial historical document, the letter of James in the New Testament. Scholars debate its authorship, but if James, the brother of Jesus, wrote it, the text reveals someone with sophisticated Greek education, deep knowledge of Jewish wisdom traditions, and rhetorical skills that suggest far more than peasant origins. The letter engages with Hellenistic philosophical concepts while remaining thoroughly Jewish in outlook. This isn't the work of an illiterate villager, but perhaps the most compelling evidence for the family's elevated status comes from how they were treated by opponents. When James was executed in 62 CE, the method tells us everything. He wasn't crucified like a common criminal or insurgent. According to Josephus, he was stoned, the punishment reserved for blasphemy under Jewish law. But more significantly, his execution caused such public outrage that the high priest who ordered it Ananus, was removed from office. Stop and think about that. The execution of a single man led to the removal of the high priest, the most powerful Jewish religious authority in Jerusalem. What kind of person generates that level of public sympathy and political consequence? Not a nobody, not a marginal figure from an insignificant family, someone whose death violated public sensibilities and political norms. Later Christian tradition, preserved by Hegesippus and recorded by Eusebius, provides even more dramatic details. According to these accounts, James was called James the Just, and was so respected that even non-Christian Jews revered him. He supposedly spent so much time praying in the temple that his knees became calloused like a camel's. The Pharisees and scribes asked him to address the crowd at Passover from the temple pinnacle, believing his words would dissuade people from following Jesus. Instead, James proclaimed Jesus as the Son of Man sitting at God's right hand. The authorities, enraged by this betrayal, threw him from the pinnacle. He survived the fall, began praying for his attackers, and was then stoned and finally clubbed to death by a launderer using his club. Dramatic? Absolutely. Hagiographic exaggeration? Probably. But embedded in this legend are kernels of historical truth. James held extraordinary public authority. His voice carried weight even among Jesus' opponents, and his death was controversial and consequential. Now let's connect these threads back to the ossuary. If authentic, it represents physical evidence of this influential figure, the brother of Jesus, the leader of the Jerusalem church, the man whose royal lineage might have been more than theological metaphor. The limestone box, with its careful Aramaic inscription, becomes a witness to a family whose true story remains partially hidden beneath layers of religious tradition and political necessity. But we haven't addressed the central question: does any of this prove royal lineage? Not definitively. What we have is circumstantial evidence, patterns that suggest the traditional narrative of abject poverty might be incomplete or deliberately understated. Let's examine why that understatement might have been necessary. Roman imperial policy toward royal claimants was brutally clear. Herod the Great, installed by Rome, slaughtered the male infants of Bethlehem according to Matthew's Gospel, seeking to eliminate a potential rival king. Whether historically accurate or theological symbolism, this story reflects the political reality. Rome tolerated no challenges to its authority. Any family with legitimate royal credentials would have powerful incentive to obscure those credentials, to present themselves as harmless artisans rather than dynastic threats. The genealogies in Matthew and Luke serve a theological purpose, establishing Jesus' messianic credentials by connecting him to David. But they also preserve family memory, oral traditions about ancestry that someone considered important enough to record. These aren't fabrications designed to impress Romans. They're arguments directed at Jewish audiences who understood Davidic descent as essential for messianic claims. Consider the political landscape more carefully. After the Jewish revolt of 66 to 70 CE, which culminated in the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, Rome became even more vigilant about Jewish nationalist movements. Any group claiming Davidic heritage, any community organized around a messianic figure descended from Israel's ancient monarchy, represented potential insurrection. The Christians, with their executed king and their proclamation of his coming kingdom, walked a razor's edge. This explains the paradoxical presentation of Jesus in the Gospels. He's simultaneously the King of the Jews, descended from David, and a humble teacher who renders unto Caesar what is Caesar's. He claims authority to forgive sins, a divine prerogative, yet washes his disciples' feet like a servant. The Gospels construct a carefully balanced narrative. Jesus is king, but not the kind of king Rome needs to fear. His kingdom is spiritual, not political. His throne is in heaven, not Jerusalem. But was this always the complete story? Or did the early Christian community, facing Roman persecution and the very real threat of annihilation, strategically emphasize Jesus' humility while quietly preserving traditions of his royal lineage? The ossuary inscription, if authentic, might represent one of those preserved traditions, a family member identified by his connection to a brother whose significance transcended his earthly origins. Let's examine one more crucial piece of evidence: the practice of ossuary burial itself. Secondary burial in limestone ossuaries was common among Jerusalem's population, but it wasn't universal. It required resources: a family tomb, usually a natural cave or a rock-cut chamber, and the limestone box itself. These weren't cheap. A skilled craftsman had to quarry the limestone, shape it, smooth the surfaces, and often carve inscriptions or decorative rosettes. The James ossuary, while not elaborately decorated, shows skilled workmanship. The inscription, whether partially forged or entirely authentic, demonstrates that someone with literacy and resources cared enough about James's identity to permanently record it in stone. This wasn't a hasty burial. This was a family with means and motivation to preserve their dead according to proper custom. Archaeological surveys of first-century Jerusalem ossuaries reveal interesting patterns. Inscriptions appear on only about 1/3 of discovered ossuaries. When present, they typically identify the deceased by name and sometimes by profession or family relationship. The James ossuary inscription is unusual because it includes 3 generations: grandfather Joseph, father through implication, son James, and brother Jesus. This multi-generational identification suggests family pride, genealogical consciousness, and the importance of preserving family memory. Families conscious of their genealogies aren't typically peasant families struggling for survival. They're families with something to remember, something worth preserving. In Jewish culture, especially among those claiming Davidic descent, genealogical records served crucial purposes. They established tribal affiliation, determined temple service eligibility for Levites, and validated messianic claims for Davidic descendants. Here's where the evidence becomes truly fascinating. According to the 2nd century Christian writer Julius Africanus, quoted by Eusebius, the family of Jesus preserved genealogical records. These records, Africanus claims, were kept by Jesus' relatives who traveled from Nazareth and other villages to teach about their ancestry. They were called the Desposini, a Greek term meaning belonging to the master, essentially Jesus' blood relatives. These Desposini weren't anonymous peasants. They were known, tracked, and occasionally persecuted by Roman authorities precisely because of their royal lineage claims. The Emperor Vespasian, according to Eusebius, ordered the execution of all descendants of David. His son Domitian continued this policy, as evidenced by the interrogation of Jude's grandsons mentioned earlier. The Emperor Trajan likewise pursued Davidic descendants. Why would 3 successive Roman emperors care about descendants of a royal dynasty that had ended 600 years earlier? Because lineage mattered. In a world where legitimacy flowed from ancestry, where kingship was hereditary, and where prophecies spoke of David's heir restoring Israel's kingdom, these descendants represented ideological and potentially military threats. Rome didn't persecute irrelevant nobodies. The historical record confirms that Jesus' family was tracked, monitored, and occasionally interrogated by imperial authorities well into the 2nd century. This surveillance would be inexplicable if the family were merely carpenters from an unimportant village. It makes perfect sense if they were known Davidic descendants with genealogical records, family traditions, and a growing religious movement proclaiming their executed kinsman as the rightful king of the Jews. Now let's return to our ossuary with this broader context in mind. If the James ossuary is authentic, it's not just a bone box. It's a material witness to a family that bridged two worlds, the ancient Davidic monarchy and the emerging Christian church. It's evidence of a man significant enough that his brother's name alone could identify him, in an era when that brother's name was becoming the most influential in human history. The debates about authenticity will likely continue for decades. Forgers are sophisticated. Ancient artifacts enter the market through murky channels. Provenance problems plague even legitimate discoveries, but focusing solely on authentication misses the larger historical questions the Ossuary raises. Whether the specific artifact sitting in Oded Golan's collection is genuine or not, the historical James certainly existed. Josephus confirms it. Paul's letters confirm it. Early Christian sources confirm it, and that historical James led a movement in Jerusalem, commanded authority that superseded the apostles, and died a death controversial enough to topple a high priest. The question isn't whether James existed, but what his existence tells us about his family's true status. Let's examine the archaeological landscape of first-century Jerusalem more broadly, because the city itself provides context for understanding social stratification and royal lineages. Jerusalem wasn't a backwater. It was a major pilgrimage center, drawing hundreds of thousands of Jews annually for festivals. The temple, rebuilt and expanded by Herod the Great, was one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. Its courts, porticos, and sacred precincts required massive administrative infrastructure, thousands of priests and Levites, and complex genealogical records to verify priestly lineage. In this environment, genealogy mattered intensely, not just for priests, but for anyone claiming special status or authority. The Pharisees traced their interpretive traditions back to Moses. The Sadducees claimed authority through their priestly lineages. The Essenes, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, maintained strict genealogical requirements for their community. Against this backdrop, claims of Davidic descent weren't unusual or automatically suspicious. They were part of Jewish identity, especially for those from the tribe of Judah. But Davidic descent carried unique weight. The prophets had promised that David's throne would be eternal, that one of his descendants would rule Israel forever. 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 16 records God's covenant with David. "Your house and your kingdom shall endure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever." This wasn't ancient history. It was living expectation, prophetic promise awaiting fulfillment. Multiple messianic movements emerged in first-century Judea, each centered on a figure claiming or attributed Davidic heritage. Judas of Galilee led a revolt in 6 CE. Theudas gathered followers around 36 CE. An Egyptian Jew led thousands to the Mount of Olives in the 50s CE, promising to overthrow Roman rule. All were crushed, all ended in execution and the scattering of their followers. Yet Jesus' movement survived, grew, and eventually transformed the Roman Empire itself. What made the difference? Traditional Christian theology points to the resurrection, the unique supernatural vindication of Jesus' claims. But from a historical perspective, we can identify several factors. The movement spread beyond Judea into the broader Mediterranean world, its adaptation to Gentile audiences, and crucially, the leadership structure that emerged after Jesus' death with James at its center in Jerusalem. James's leadership provided continuity, legitimacy, and a living connection to Jesus' family and teachings. When disputes arose about doctrine or practice, James's judgment carried weight precisely because of who he was: the Lord's brother, the guardian of family traditions, the representative of Jesus' bloodline. If that bloodline was genuinely royal, James's authority had layers of meaning beyond simple familial connection. The letter to the Hebrews, though not written by James, reflects concerns about Jesus' priestly and royal credentials. Chapter 7 addresses the question of how Jesus can be a priest when he descended from Judah, a tribe with no priestly heritage. The author's solution is brilliant. Jesus is a priest, according to the order of Melchizedek, an ancient priest-king who predated the Levitical priesthood. This argument only works if Jesus' Davidic royal descent is accepted as historical fact. The text builds its theological innovation on genealogical foundation. Similarly, the book of Revelation, written probably in the 90s CE, uses royal Davidic imagery extensively. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, who alone is worthy to open the sealed scroll. He wears many crowns. He rules the nations with an iron scepter. The imagery isn't metaphorical decoration, it's theological argument grounded in genealogical claim. Jesus can fulfill these royal prophetic roles because he descends from the royal line. Now imagine you're a Christian in 2nd century Rome. You're part of a small, often persecuted minority claiming that a crucified Jewish preacher is the true king of the universe. Roman authorities are suspicious, occasionally violent. Your community's survival depends partly on not appearing politically threatening. Do you emphasize your leader's royal heritage and genealogical records? Or do you emphasize his humility, his spiritual kingdom, his message of loving enemies and paying taxes? The Gospels, written between approximately 70 and 100 CE, navigate this tension carefully. They preserve the genealogies, maintaining the theological necessity of Davidic descent, but they also present Jesus as non-threatening to Rome. Pilate finds no fault in him. Jesus declares his kingdom is not of this world. The emphasis falls on spiritual transformation, not political revolution. Yet the genealogies remain, stubbornly present, meticulously traced back through David to Abraham in Matthew, back through David to Adam in Luke. Someone considered these genealogies important enough to preserve and record, despite the political risks. This suggests they weren't theological inventions but family traditions, oral histories passed down through generations, perhaps written in the genealogical records that Julius Africanus mentioned the Desposini maintaining. The James Ossuary, if authentic, becomes a material anchor point for these traditions. Here, carved in stone, is a family relationship. James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. 3 names that appear in the genealogies, 3 members of a family that claimed or was claimed by others to descend from Israel's greatest king. The ossuary doesn't prove the genealogical claims, but it confirms the family existed, that James was significant enough to merit identification by his famous brother, and that someone cared enough to preserve his memory in permanent stone. Let's consider one final piece of evidence that might illuminate the royal lineage question, the treatment of Jesus' family in the decades after his death. We've already discussed the Roman persecution of Davidic descendants, but there's another pattern worth examining: the veneration of Jesus' family by early Christian communities. Hegesippus, writing in the mid-2nd century, provides detailed accounts of James's piety, authority, and martyrdom. He describes James entering the temple's Holy of Holies, a privilege reserved exclusively for the high priest. Whether historically accurate or legendary embellishment, this tradition reveals how early Christians viewed James as someone whose sanctity and authority transcended normal boundaries, someone whose special status derived from both his relationship to Jesus and perhaps his own inherent dignity. The Desposini, Jesus' blood relatives, held special status in early Christian communities. They traveled, taught, and were supported by congregations specifically because of their family connection. This pattern continued into the early 2nd century, suggesting that Jesus' family maintained cohesion, identity, and authority long after his death. Families maintain such cohesion for specific reasons: shared property, shared mission, or shared identity. For the Desposini, that shared identity centered on their relationship to Jesus and possibly their royal lineage. Eusebius records that after James's death, another relative named Simeon, son of Clopas and cousin of Jesus, became the next leader of the Jerusalem church. After Simeon came Eustace, another relative. The leadership remained within Jesus's extended family for generations. This dynastic succession, this keeping of authority within bloodlines, mirrors royal practices more than it does typical religious leadership patterns. Early Christianity maintained a family-based leadership structure centered on Jesus's relatives, suggesting something more than simple respect for familial connection. Archaeological evidence from Nazareth and its surrounding region provides one more layer to our investigation. Recent excavations have revealed that first-century Galilee was more cosmopolitan, more connected to broader Mediterranean culture than previously assumed. The nearby city of Sepphoris, just an hour's walk from Nazareth, was being rebuilt as a showcase Greco-Roman city during Jesus' youth. Archaeological remains show theaters, Roman baths, elaborate mosaics, and multi-story buildings. If Joseph and his sons worked as builders or craftsmen, they likely participated in Sepphoris's construction boom. This would have exposed them to Hellenistic culture, Greek language, and the architectural sophistication of the Roman world. It would have provided income beyond subsistence farming. It would have created social connections with urban elites, merchants, and administrators. The isolated peasant carpenter becomes instead a skilled tradesman, operating in a complex, interconnected regional economy. This revised understanding of Galilean life doesn't prove royal lineage, but it corrects the assumption of grinding poverty and isolation. Jesus' family could have been skilled artisans, literate, relatively prosperous by local standards, maintaining genealogical records and family traditions that connected them to David's ancient throne. They would have navigated carefully between their royal heritage and Roman suspicion, emphasizing their humble occupations while quietly preserving their ancestral identity. The James Ossuary controversy, then, becomes more than authentication debates about patina and paleography. It becomes a window into questions about identity, memory, and how families preserve their stories across generations. Whether this specific limestone box held James's bones or not, the historical James carried the weight of family tradition, religious authority, and possibly royal heritage that shaped early Christianity's development. So was Jesus from a royal family? The evidence suggests yes, with important qualifications. He descended from David's line according to genealogical records his family maintained. Early Christians proclaimed this descent as essential to his messianic identity. Roman authorities took the claim seriously enough to persecute Davidic descendants for generations. Jesus' family maintained cohesion, authority, and special status in early Christian communities, patterns consistent with dynastic identity. But royal doesn't mean wealthy, powerful, or politically influential in first-century terms. The Davidic monarchy had ended 6 centuries earlier. Its descendants were scattered, some prosperous, many not. Royal blood didn't guarantee royal power. It meant carrying the memory of past glory, the weight of prophetic expectation, and the danger of Roman suspicion. It meant maintaining genealogies, teaching children their heritage, and hoping that someday, somehow, God's promises to David would be fulfilled. Jesus' family navigated this complex identity by emphasizing their trades, their humble origins, their spiritual rather than political kingdom. Yet they never abandoned their genealogical claims. They preserved them in oral tradition, in written records, in the very structure of their movement's leadership. James led the Jerusalem church, not despite his family connection, but because of it. His authority flowed from his relationship to Jesus and his position as representative of Jesus' bloodline. The ossuary inscription, if authentic, captures this precisely. James is identified by his father and his brother, the two relationships that define him: son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. These aren't random identifications. They place James within a family structure, a genealogical line that the early Christians believed stretched back through David to Abraham, from Abraham to Adam, from Adam to God himself. Whether carved by ancient hands or modern forgers, those Aramaic letters pose questions we cannot fully answer. They challenge our assumptions about Jesus' origins, his family's status, and the complex interplay between religious faith and historical fact. They remind us that behind the theological doctrines and spiritual teachings stands a real family, real people who lived in a specific time and place, who maintained traditions, preserved memories, and shaped a movement that changed history. The royal lineage question ultimately can't be resolved by any single artifact. It requires weighing multiple sources: biblical genealogies, Roman persecution patterns, early Christian veneration of Jesus' family, archaeological evidence from Galilee and Jerusalem, and yes, controversial artifacts like the James Ossuary. Each piece contributes to a larger picture, a mosaic of evidence that suggests Jesus' family carried royal heritage even as they lived as craftsmen in Galilee's villages. This heritage wasn't irrelevant decoration. It shaped how Jesus understood his mission, how his followers interpreted his message, and how his family maintained authority in the movement he founded. Royal descent meant Jesus could claim to fulfill ancient prophecies, to restore David's throne, to be the anointed King Isaiah and the prophets promised. Without that genealogical foundation, Christianity's messianic claims collapse into incoherence. The James Ossuary, authentic or forged, points us toward these deeper truths. It asks us to look beyond simple categories of peasant or prince, to recognize the complexity of first-century Jewish identity, and to appreciate how families preserved their stories against overwhelming odds. James died violently in Jerusalem, executed for proclaiming his brother's kingship. His bones, whether in that disputed limestone box or lost to history, rest somewhere in the ancient city. His memory, preserved in Christian tradition, reminds us that royal heritage can reside in humble circumstances, that truth transcends poverty or wealth, and that the most profound revolutions begin not in palaces, but in ordinary families who carry extraordinary legacies. So we return to our opening question: was Jesus from a royal family? The evidence, examined forensically and honestly, suggests he was. He descended from David's line. His family maintained this identity despite persecution. His movement proclaimed it essential. Roman emperors feared it. And somewhere in Jerusalem, perhaps in an ossuary inscribed with his name, James the Just rests, the brother of the king, the guardian of a family's royal memory, the witness to a heritage that changed the world.